Hey class, in this small video I'm gonna show you how to solve this exam requirement. I feel that with the video I can explain to you better than just sending you the answers directly. So let's get started. The idea is that we need to create a web app with Angular. That will have to describe a car business. You will have your tickets, so you can read this in advance. I actually recommend you read the entire exam requirement before you start working on it, because you might find that some things you could solve. For example, like a point that's farther ahead, you can solve easy in a previous point. So take 2 or 3 minutes to carefully read the requirement and then start working on it on the exam. So let's start. So first of all, we need to create an app that will have to manage a car business. So for this, we'll have to manage some cars. We need to create some data structures for these cars. Each car will have an engine and some fields that are described here, and we'll have to implement Bootstrap 3 framework. We'll have to have validation. Have to submit this to a server, to a backend, just like we practiced in class. And this is pretty much it. So let's get started. So first of all, let's create the first point is to create a new Angular app, right? So as you are used to it by now, I assume, we need to create our new Angular app using Angular CLI. So just have ng-new car app, for example. So here we will specify that yes, actually we want Angular routing, because if you look further ahead, you see we'll require to implement navigation, right? So you see create native components and use routing to create navigation between them. So this is an easy way to just have the code generated for you. So here obviously we're going to use CSS, and then that's it. So our application should be now created. So we have it here. Looking further ahead, you see we'll have to post. So we have to create a JSON server. So we can actually do this now because we're already here. So let's make a new folder here. Okay, let's say server. You go inside this, open a new console, say npm init. You can see here -I, -y, it will respond to yes to all the questions. Okay, so here we're gonna have npm install save JSON server. You can just create the server. Obviously, for this to be considered finished, you need also to create the database. So the JSON file that will store the cars and all the other required data. Okay, so see now. So now we open Visual Studio Code, and we see that we have our two apps, car app and our server. Inside our JSON server, we go to package.json. We create a new script. Here we can say start. And to run this, we can go and check the documentation for the JSON server, which you can find it on GitHub. We see the minimum requirement to run the JSON server is to just call the command and specify a database, or this will be automatically created for you if you don't specify one. Alternatively, you can specify a port if you want. So let's use, for example, this command here. and let's leave the default port here. Let's close this, put a comma here. Now it should be fine. So now if you open our CLI in our server folder, and if you say npm start, you should see our server starting, and automatically it should create a database for us, and by default it will create with post, comment, profile, so it will put some dummy data there. So if you check here, it already have something like this. So this was created for us, and if you go to localhost 3000, we can see our posts here and our comments and so on. We will not need this. We can replace this with something like this, cars, and inside here we're gonna have an array. If we want, actually we already have the watch command here, so this should automatically update for us. So if we refresh this, we should see that we have the cars. If we go in our tutorial folder here and you go inside the car app, first of all we need to create the 3 pages that are required for us. So we have a dashboard, we have a car page, and a report page. So to do this, we say ng generate component. And here we can specify dashboard, cars, and report. So this should generate for us 3 components. So yeah, it didn't work this way. We're gonna say cars. So we're gonna take it one by one and report. Okay, so one of our other requirements is to create a new class, car class and an engine class. So I'm gonna say generate class car. And let's create a new class called engine. So in our project folder, if you go in our car app, you see that we have now inside our source, our app, and have our cars component with the HTML, the class file, the component class file, the CSS for this component, the dashboard, the report. And also we have a car and an engine. So if you want to make this a bit tighter, we can create a new folder here, say models for example, and we can move the car and the engine, we can move it inside models. So now we're going to have this here. So it's another point that we've created. We need to use routing to create a navigation between them. So this is going to be the next thing, but we also checked this this next point for creating a car class and an engine class, only using the CLI. So okay, now we've created these classes, but obviously we haven't implemented this structure. So we have let's start with the car interface. So if you go here, let's have this for now. Let's have it as a comment here. So let's implement the car structure. So in this case, we'll have our car entity will have a brand, which is going to be a string. So we're going to have a brand. I will not ask you to make all of them private and make getters and setters. It's enough to have them as normal properties, as public properties. So we're going to have a model. So to not be confused with the models, we have our folder mottos. Maybe also string. We're gonna have a fabrication year, so we're gonna have a year. It's gonna be a number. We're gonna have a price, so a number. Have km, number. Engine, it's gonna be type engine. Okay, so we have finished all of them. Now it's time to implement this class, the engine class. So in here, if we copy our command from here, so let's see exactly what we need for engine. I want to have fuel, maybe a string. So actually here we can specify, if you want to be more specific, you can say that this can be only, for example, petrol or diesel or electric, instead of having this untyped. So like instead of just having a string, we can just have them specify which of them. So here I'm just fixing some TS-lint issues. It's not a big deal if you leave them as double quotes. It will be compiled. It will not be an issue, but for the sake of TS-lint, yeah. So have fuel, have power, which is going to be a number, right? Have consumption, also a number. So I think we're done here. Let's remove all the white space. So what we have to do now in here is we're gonna have to import here. So if you use Visual Studio Code, just need to click here and or alt space, and it's gonna import this missing class for you. So now we can safely say that we've implemented these two classes here. So when I say implemented, it's not really correct, because when you implement in OOP implementing, you usually implement interfaces, you don't implement classes. But for the sake of this course, you just you created this class structure, let's say. So the next thing is to import Bootstrap. So for this, we go to Bootstrap website. The best way to import actually Bootstrap in an Angular application is to use import it inside Angular JSON, inside scripts and styles. You import here. So you use npm to install in the modules Bootstrap and jQuery, and you import it here. But to make this easier for you, I'm just gonna import it directly from their website in the template. So we're gonna have our CSS here. So let's look for our index, or for our entry point, which is gonna be here. So just before we and the head here, we import the Bootstrap CSS, and import the script at the end before we end the body. So obviously Bootstrap requires jQuery. You can look for this. So actually you can find it in an example. You can import this here. So we can safely say that we implemented this part. So we finished this part. So now let's make sure that our app actually runs. So for this, If we look inside our app, so if you go inside our package.json, I have that we have at the start is going to be ng-serve. So we are gonna start this, and we're gonna say npm start here. So now we have our JSON server started in this console, and we're gonna have our Angular app started in this other console. So this should start in the port 4200, sorry. You can modify this command, for example, to automatically, when you start this, to open in a new browser tab, to specify a different port or whatever. But for the sake of this tutorial, we just leave it default. So what's happening now is that Webpack, which is powering Angular, is packing all the libraries into bundles, and when you actually deploy this, or when you build this for production, you can you'll get all the minified libraries bundled, and you will get in this dist folder. I don't think we have it here, but usually when you build, so when you say npm run build, you're gonna create a dist folder here where you have the build app, which is going to be smaller and faster than the one that you have for development. So as you can see, you have that the server is listening on 4200, so everything is fine. So let's actually check our app here. So here you can see we have our car app. So it's time to finish to implement the routing here, and to do the navigation. Right? So when you look on getting started with Bootstrap, you have some examples here. So actually we can take a look at this starter template here. So if you just press Ctrl U, you can look at the source, and you can just copy paste all of this. So we have all of this, and we can copy this inside our app component HTML. So don't forget to keep this router outlet, so you can recognize the Angular logo that we have on our starter page here. So in our case, we're going to delete everything here. I'm going to paste this, and inside our container, we're going to put our router outlet. So inside here, we're going to have our pages inside here. And in this case, let's actually make the buttons. So we have a button called dashboard, and another is going to be cars and report. So I'm going to have cars and report. So for now, just leave it like this. We don't care about what's in the link. And let's check our application. So now our car app is like this. So what you can also do here, you see you have the project name, and in our app component, in our class here, we can have this title, which is a property of this. You can say I don't know, car I don't know, management system. I don't know. You can just put your name here, and inside the project name here, we're going to use interpolation. Let's say title. Now we're going to have, this is going to rebuild. We're going to have this title here. So we have dashboard, cars, and report. So it's time to add routing to our application. If you remember when we created the application, the CLI, you remember that we were asked if we want routing. So this means that we need to have a way to add, to navigate from component to component. So what the CLI actually did for us was to add this app routing module here automatically. As wise for the components, it add them here in the declaration array. So as you remember from class, in the declarations array, we add our components that we add for this module. And in imports, we put our modules, and in the providers, we put our services. So we are left with this app routing module that has this constant, this routes constant here. And in here we can see that this routes object is actually an array of routes. So if you want to see more details, you control-click on it. You have the documentation, the TypeScript here. We can go further and click on route, and you can see that actually route is an interface, and they have these optional parameters like path, component, and these are called, this can deactivate, can activate. They are called route guards that can be used for protecting admin areas or different sections of our website that we don't want people to see. So inside here, let's add our route. So we're going to create a route object, and here let's say for a default route, which is going to be the default route. We're going to map to a component of dashboard component. And here the idea will import automatically our component. We're going to duplicate this object here, and I'm going to say for cars, I have our cars component. Okay, let's see what's wrong here. Car component, okay, automatically importing. We're gonna have our reports. We're gonna map to reports component, and for now that's it. We're gonna have also cars add /add path for the component that we're going to use later to add new values in our collection. So in here we can see that we added this this routing system. Let's check if our application works correctly. And we open the console and we don't have any errors. And for our navigation here, let's say here I'm going to add a router link. So router, okay. So yeah, this is I'm going to use the ID, so don't type this. Okay, so we have our router link. We're going to have for the dashboard, it's going to be actually nothing. So I'm going to will not have any route param. So this is going to be our dashboard, and we can actually copy this. And we're going to have also for cars. Here, cars, reports. So let's see what we did now, and let's see if we have any issues. So our app is recompiling, so we don't have any issues here. But let's see what happens if you click on this one. So you see this changes, but nothing happens inside here. So actually, this is really misleading. Because if you look inside here, inside our body here, so uproot, you can see that inside this container we have an app dashboard, and when we click on cars we have cars component. So this actually works, but what's going on is that this navbar here covers the entire body. So what can we do to fix this is to add for example a padding of I don't know, 50 pixels. So now we have correct navigation. So what can we do is actually to go in our app component.css here, or in styles.css directly. So we can add a global here. Let's say body, let's say padding top of 50 pixels. So this should now recompile. So you see you have all our components. You can navigate between our components. Actually, if we go here, actually this is not correct. In our component we still have this href here. So we can actually copy here. We can replace this with this. So href can have this. So that should be fine. So in this case we already completed this other point, this big point. So as you can see we already finished 0.5, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3.5 points, so it's going really well for now. So moving on now, let's move to the number 5 point. So we need to create a list of cars and to display it. So this is actually really simple to do. What we can do actually is to go, let's close a bit of the, let's make a bit of order here. So let's go inside our cars component here, and let's make a new property. Let's call it cars of type car. It's going to be an array. So we need to import this car class from its file, obviously. So let's create a hard-coded list here. So let's make, I usually like to have a separate file, so let's say car list .ts here, and I can say const cars. It can be also variable like let or var, doesn't matter. I usually use a constant here. Cars of type car, okay, equals to this array here. Let's make tsLint happy, and here we have some white space here, it's not happy. So inside here let's add a new car. So we specify, one of the advantages of having TypeScript is that we can have typing inside our IDE. So if we didn't type the car class, we wouldn't have this help here in the IDE. So we have, for example, brand. We say here, come on, let's say Renault, and let's add another one. Say engine is diesel, if I remember correctly. So actually the engine, it's an engine class, so this should be a new object here. So we have a consumption of I don't know, let's say 4 liters, and and the fuel is going to be, if we say fuel here, as you see that we can have only petrol, diesel, so we can say this is petrol, and the power is 100 horsepower. So this is the TS-lint showing us that our object is not correctly filled. So we need to add kilometers. So let's say it has 100,000 kilometers. And the next one is going to be model, which actually we can move this up here. So let's say it's Clio. I don't know. So now I have a duplicate value. And the price is going to be like 7,000 euros. And year is 2010. So again, TS-lint is complaining because we haven't used simple codes, used double codes. But again, you can change these rules from the TS-lint config, from ts-config. So actually you can go in, if this is too much for you, you can go to ts-config here and you can specify different rules. But anyway, so we have this, this new car created. Let's create another one, and this one is going to be, I don't know, VW. It's going to be, I don't know, Passat. Consumption, this is going to take a lot more. Then it's going to be a diesel. Power is going to be 200, and kilometers, maybe the Passat owners take like, I don't know, 20,000, and is 15,000 euros, and this is from 2017. Okay, so we have our two cars. Now we have created this, but why are you complaining here? Okay, we need a new line and the semicolon here because TS-lint again is complaining. Yeah. Okay, so TS-lint is happy now. Actually, here, if you want to be more precise, you can say as engine. Now you have more typings, but for now it's okay if you just put the correct values. And now let's export. Let's say export default cars. So we export this constant from here, so we can use it inside here. So in our constructor, or actually let's do in the callback and then ng on init. So I'm going to say that this cars equals to cars. So now we're going to import our cars from the car list. So we have our cars in a separate file. We have our cars. We could have put our car list inside this component, but it would have been ugly, and the idea is to have everything as clean as possible and as ordered as possible. So in our cars component HTML, remove this car works, and actually let's go inside our in Bootstrap and let's look for some type of elements that we can use to list this, right? So let's check the components here. So we could use maybe a panel, maybe would be nice, or a list group would be also nice. So we can copy this from here, and we could say here something like this. And instead of listing directly this listing directly the items, we could iterate using ng4. So we can say ng4. So yeah, This is the ID. We have a car of cars. Here we'll use again interpolation. Say car brand, I think. And let's say again car.no. So let's check our application now. So here we have an issue. Actually, we messed up with the router link, actually, which is pretty embarrassing because we forgot to put yeah, this happens sometimes. So our application compiles. So if you go now in the cars, you can see that we can see our list. So if we, for example, add a new one here, this is a BMW TI. You can leave it the same. So now on the refresh or recompile, we have the new one. So this is it for displaying a list, a predefined list. So we can say that we can mark this as done.